The regular meeting of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission will now begin.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Jackson. I am the chair of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission, and I'm going to call this meeting for July 13th, 2021 to order. As we begin, I'm noting for the record that this meeting has remote participation by members of the City Council and City staff as authorized under Minnesota statutes, sections 13D.021, due to the declared local public health emergency. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and subject to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum for this meeting.
And before I call the roll, did you want to note the two absences?
Yes, I'm sorry. Commissioner Sylvester and Vice Chair Abdi will both be absent from tonight's meeting.
Commissioner Sarah.
Present.
Commissioner Crockett.
Here.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Here.
Commissioner McGuire.
Present.
Commissioner Pino.
Here.
Commissioner Sparks.
Here.
Chair Jackson.
Here.
There are 7 members present.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum. Our next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda and acceptance of meetings, both from the January 8th meeting. So may I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved by Commissioner Sarah.
Second?
So moved by Commissioner Pino. Seconded.
Thank you. Also a motion for the acceptance of the minutes.
Chair Jackson, you can do those combined.
Okay, so we have them both motioned and seconded, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We need to call a roll for that. So
Yes. Commissioner Sarah.
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett.
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Pino.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
aye.
There are 7 ayes.
Right, thank you. That motion carries, and the minutes and the agenda from the June 8th meeting are both accepted and into the record. Our next item on our agenda is the, I'm sorry, I didn't turn my page. Where am I? You know what, everybody, Minneapolis, this day today for me has been not one I will care to remember. Okay, here we go. Next order of business is the acceptance of public comments. I'm now opening the floor and inviting comments from the community. We do limit public comment period to no more than 2 minutes per speaker. With that, are there any community members here tonight that would wish to address the commission? I want to remind you to press *6 to unmute yourself and say your name for the record.
Hello, this is Dave Bicking of Minneapolis. I'd like to comment just briefly about the after action review of officer-involved shootings that you have on your discussion agenda. I'm glad that you're going to be discussing this. I don't know quite how the PCOC can address this, but it's an outstanding issue that has been frustrating for a long, long time, that there is no analysis of what went wrong in past officer-involved shootings. Our friend Chuck Turchik, I don't believe, is on the line because he has a problem with his home phone line. So he would definitely bring to your attention that he has been letting the Public Safety Committee know for now. It's been 360 days since the City Council directed the Public Safety Committee to discuss after-action reviews of officer-involved shootings. And to this day, the Public Safety Committee has never put that on their agenda. They've simply ignored it. And so I don't know what the PCOC can do, but somebody needs to do something. It's something that Communities United Against Police Brutality has been bringing to the attention of the police chief for over 3 years now. We said there would be an after-action review of Justine Damon's shooting, but never has come to pass. If I could also comment briefly on the item that was just added to the agenda, and I just saw it 15 minutes ago, about the selection of cases. Haven't had a chance to review it closely, but I'm concerned. It seems like the problem of, voting on cases and whether that can be done in time and whether it's an open meeting issue and all that has been resolved by the PCOC simply not having any vote on which cases they're going to see. I don't fully understand and wish I'd heard the presentation already, but how those cases are going to be selected. But if it's based on what I sort of heard that, we'll select cases based on their percentage in the population of cases for a particular issue. But if that means that, say, just randomly, we say 10% of the cases involve police cars idling excessively, does that mean that the PCOC wants to hear 10% of the cases about that issue? It was important that the PCOC be able to vote to hear more information on the cases that are of greatest interest to you and of greatest interest to the public. So I'm not sure how that works, but I think that may be a concern you should raise. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. And well, are there any other members of the public who would like to make a remark or address the commission this evening? Remember to press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name. If there are no other public comments, then we're going to move on. I want to thank Mr. Bicking for his comments tonight. Next order of business is our reports, and I am going to recognize Commissioner Pinot, who will present the Audit Subcommittee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a change in schedule, as I believe we recognized in our last full PCOC meeting. Audit committees are now being hosted at 1 o'clock on the third Monday of every month. So for those of you who are watching in the audience and want to join us at those subcommittees, it's now on Mondays, not on Tuesdays. Yes, and in our meeting that we most recently had, we asked staff to begin drafting a paper on no-knock search warrants and its use by the Minneapolis Police Department. I have been notified that a draft has recently been completed, and we'll be discussing that in our upcoming meeting later this month. In addition to that, we had a conversation about coaching as well. We're beginning our methodology development of that topic. It's a little bit longer of a process there, but we have begun it, and we're looking forward to digging in deep on both of those topics. Those are the two that have been referred to our subcommittee, and we're eager to keep the ball rolling on both of them. That is all I really have for this report right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Pinot. Are there any questions from other commissioners or discussion for the audit subcommittee's report? We're good.
All right, thank you, everybody.
I'm now going to recognize Commissioner Sarah.
Thank you. Good evening. We had two speakers at our last meeting. The first three speakers on two topics. First, we had two speakers on the topic of immigration and its relationship to misdemeanors, but generally arrests and policing. We had Vina Iyer from the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota, and we had Michelle Rivero who is the Director of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs here in the city of Minneapolis. They gave a great presentation, provided a lot of very useful information that's going to be informative to our work on misdemeanors as we're kind of moving forward with that research and trying to formulate our policy ideas and issues we would like to bring to the full commission. Ms. Iyer had several questions for us. She said they weren't formal asks. She would like some time to kind of nail down her questions or make a more formal ask or more formal presentation to this body, which makes perfect sense to me. We were just sort of getting to know each other and exchanging information. I had an idea that maybe someone from this commission, perhaps someone who is an immigration law attorney and expert, would be willing to sit down with Ms. Rivero and Ms. Iyer and just talk through some issues and maybe bring a formal presentation or a formal request or a formal proposal to the full body so that we could consider it. And I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, but we do have an immigration law expert on our commission. We're very lucky in that way. So that was one point to bring up. And then our second presentation was by Mr. Bicking, who I hope is still on the phone so he can keep me honest about what he presented. He discussed arbitration generally, and he sort of focused on the reasons that the city has lost in the past in arbitration, meaning the chief took some action, usually a termination, and it was appealed all the way up to arbitration, and the arbitrator overturned that decision and reinstated the officer. Sometimes in most cases with discipline, but not a termination. And Mr. Bicking provided several reasons for that. One is that the city didn't follow its own process for issuing discipline. And another is that what commonly happens is the chief may terminate or discipline one officer for an act, but the union will bring forward information or the officer will bring forward information that this kind of act or this kind of conduct has happened in the past and it was not disciplined or not recognized or something like that. And that causes a problem in arbitration just because of how labor law works and so on. And so what Mr. Bicking proposed was a disciplinary reset. It's actually very simple. It's just a paragraph that would appear in disciplinary, like the discipline matrix or a document provided to all the police department, informing every officer, hey, we're hitting reset today. Even if this conduct hasn't been disciplined or recognized in the past, moving forward, these are our standards for discipline, and this is the regime we will be following. He mentioned that Chief Axtell used this in St. Paul, and it has worked as far as we know for St. Paul. And it appears that Minneapolis also did that in 2018. It appears that Chief Rondo did make a disciplinary reset in the 2018 disciplinary matrix. It's again, just a simple paragraph that says, we're hitting reset essentially from today forward. This is the matrix and these are the standards and everyone will be expected to follow it. However, Mr. Bicking had a question for us. Well, for I guess himself and for us, he wasn't sure if that 2018 reset was formal and this happened, this is the reset, or if the 2018 discipline matrix was a sort of draft. And so we're not quite sure if the reset happened. So I have two takeaways from that presentation that I would like to bring to the full commission. One is just simply asking the question of the chief or whomever may be able to answer, was there a reset in 2018? If not, it sounds like they were amenable to it since it appeared in the draft document. Would they be amenable to it now? And the second question is concerning the times when the city has lost an arbitration. the city has had its decisions overturned 10 times since 2005, I believe. So it's only 10 decisions. This commission reviewed one such decision last year when Commissioner Pino and I were on the commission. So we would need to see the other 9. What I would like to do is make a motion and have discussion to see if the full commission would like to direct staff to provide all 10 of those decisions to the PMP subcommittee for us to review and do kind of a root cause analysis, like, hey, what's really going on here? Is there something we can fix? Is there a certain, I don't know what, language in the matrix that's causing a problem? Is there, what could be the root cause, and what specific recommendations could we make around arbitration so that we get better results? And Mr. Bicking, I hope I hope I summarized your presentation fully.
No.
You,
Thank you,
that's,
Commissioner.
That's very good. Yes, you did do a good summary. Thank you very much. I've had that question into the chief for over a month now without any response. It should be a simple answer, yes, no, that was for real. And I cannot get a response from the chief. Sorry to break in. I'll go.
You're forgiven. Thank you, Commissioner Sarah, for that report. Does the commission have any questions or would we like to discuss? I think I would absolutely like to follow up with that request to direct those materials be provided to your subcommittee. I'm having a really wicked, ugly day, guys. I can't wait till this meeting's over. I'm just so afraid I'm going to embarrass myself. Okay, so enough. Anyone else have another remark? Or I saw some heads nodding like you wanted to say something. No, maybe I was misinterpreting. Okay. All right. Well, since I neglected to direct the clerk to receive and file the audit committee report, I will just combine and do both right now. So if there are no other remarks to be made, questions asked, or objections, I will direct the clerk to receive and file both of these reports.
And Chair Jackson, I believe there's also a motion. I believe Commissioner Sarah made a motion, unless I misunderstood.
I did, and I buried it in all of my other comments. So I
Okay.
apologize, Chair Jackson. Let me formalize that.
Okay.
I make a motion to this body to please direct staff to provide the 10 decisions wherein the city's decision was overturned by an arbitrator.
Second.
Commissioner Sparks, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sparks. Okay, at this time, I would like to direct the clerk to receive and file both of these reports and make a note of this motion.
Well, we would need to vote on the motion.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, you guys. It started out the minute I got out of bed today. My brain is really glitching today. I apologize. Okay. I will direct the clerk to take a vote on our motion.
Commissioner Sarah,
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson,
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire,
Aye.
Commissioner Pino,
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks,
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
There are 7 ayes.
Okay, that means the motion passes. Now, I will direct the clerk to file the reports. At this time, I think that I would like to ask Andrew Hawkins to address some questions that the PCO body has about the use of stipends and the possibility of us using it for different things related to our committees, our subcommittees. Is Mr. Hawkins? Yeah,
Yep. I'm here. Sorry, my
That's
camera
okay.
was closed off. So some of that, I think, I believe, Lisa, did you talk to like city attorney or whoever be like the responsible person to find out? We've had this question from a couple of sources or a couple of different places.
I did not realize that that was a matter for the city attorney.
Okay, I got it's so I think with as far as using them in terms of
Oh,
I think it's one of those where what's that, Lisa?
I'm sorry. If you're talking about being able to use the stipends, yes, that has been clarified. I believe Chair Jackson had some technical questions regarding stipends, just the disbursement of the stipends.
Got it. Okay.
Can I ask the question now, or is that
Yeah.
what you prefer? Okay. So in some different discussions, a few of us have asked, since we, like most of us, aren't requesting those stipends that I'm aware of. I know I haven't. I did one time and never received it, so I just thought, oh, phooey, you know. But the question is, can we request them retroactively, and then once we receive our funds, then are we allowed to use those? I mean, I guess it's our money, but it's still connected to the PCOC though. And I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any conflict there. That if subcommittees decided to have events, or the outreach committee specifically wanted to hold an event, could we use the PCOC's stipend money to pay for whatever we would need?
Yep. And the easy answer. So I know there's some language in there that talks about being able to retroactively do things, and I think that's because in the past, I'm sure they had somebody somewhere probably put in 12 months of request in December. As we're in the middle of the year and this is a newer group, like I don't have any issue whatsoever with anybody putting in the retroactive stuff, and we'll make sure that it's taken care of. I'll connect you with one of our staff people that can coordinate the process. As far as what you're able to do with it, yeah, I think you covered it perfectly. It's like once that money's in your account, that is your money, and you do what you see fit. So that is outside of anybody's control other than yourself.
Sounds good to me.
Right.
So PCOC commissioners, we have our answer. Yes, we may request those funds, and yes, we may use it as we wish. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Andrew. So now we are going to see a presentation and have some discussion about the case summary, the changes in how the case synopses are selected for us. Not our choice, but Clerk Carl. Hi, good evening.
Good evening. I believe this is Mr. Hawkins presenting this as he comes back onto the screen, and I don't know who will be sharing the actual presentation so that we can see it. I'll leave that to Lisa and Andrew to figure out. I'll just tee it up a little bit by noting that we have, I think as a group, experienced much frustration this year with the process that is involved in selecting the case summaries that ultimately come forward. There isn't, from my perspective, I'll just comment, there doesn't seem to be a through line from month to month. There's no connection to efforts by this body to really touch on specific policies. Cases are just sort of a buckshot approach.
Yeah.
And so the staff agree with all of that. We have, between the OPCR, city clerk, city attorney, have met and discussed a process that we think would actually provide more of that continuity between monthly presentations, would allow us to work with the PCOC to say, where are the areas of policy you are most wanting to focus or concentrate your efforts? Let's find case summaries that tie into that level of work, to those specific policies, so that we can start to identify those trends. We can start to do that deep analysis. And it's not just sort of okay, well, this month we heard about these things that maybe even the 3 cases aren't related, and the next month it's 3 new cases. So there was intentionality in terms of coming up with the outcomes being a more consistent, thoughtful process that supports the policy spheres or spheres of policy, areas of policy concentration that this body wants to explore or to press more deeply into. So I think that's what Mr. Hawkins will be presenting to you. I think there's a very short presentation that will summarize what we are proposing at a conceptual level. And I'll frame that also. At this point, it's very conceptual. We have not taken the time to do the detailed legs under each of those processes, because if this body is not interested in the concept that we're proposing, then there's no point of us coming up with the very detailed implementation plans. And so at this point, what we wanted to do was present sort of the conceptual framing that we think would be an improved process for this body and for the staff working to support those efforts. And then with your approval, we would be able to move forward in terms of, okay, what does that take? What's the timing? When would you expect to see the results? How would those reports be presented? What would the monthly discussions look like? What would follow-up be from month to month? So those pieces, if we can suspend judgment and discussion about those pieces, for now, we want to talk about the framework and whether the frame that we've designed meets those high-level objectives that I just described. So I've yammered on long enough. Hopefully, Mr. Hawkins or someone is ready to take over and share their screen and go through that concept plan with you.
Chair Jackson, it's my understanding that Britta Momani and Christopher Band will be doing the presentation, so I will share the presentation, get the presentation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Lisa. And just really quickly from our side too, like one of the things as far as like the auditing of case processes, I think that's what we tried to kind of focus on with this, and ensure that we'd have a representative sample of cases kind of across the entire spectrum to present to people. And so obviously, Christopher and Britta are going to go into more detail with that. But the idea being that what you're going to see is sort of reflective of the actual landscape of any the amount of cases that we had and the relative proportions of cases that we had within any given calendar year. The other thing that I know had started from staff a while back that we're looking at, I mean, we finally like trying to get somebody that can kind of focus on this to help us build it out, is having a database for every single case summary that's been presented up to now. Is, I mean, they're all public, they've been presented publicly, so we have those. And it's going to be like kind of continuing on the effort. I actually believe Ryan Patrick had worked a lot on it too, like several years ago, to have essentially a database where you can go in and you can look at the allegation violation that was alleged. And so based on the alleged violation, you can pull up all the case summaries that are relevant for that topic. So that kind of allows people to, at any given time, to go through all of the case summaries from, I think, 2013 to now that exist under that scope. And then that's kind of something similar where, as we're going forward with this, making sure that it's a representative sample, those would be added into that database as well. So just to make it clear, it's one of the things where, it's, if we do something new and we create something that everybody's in agreement with, it's not, I don't even consider it something where it's like complete fresh start and everything that happened goes away. It's like, that's all public, that all exists. And so I want to make sure that that's available in a format that's digestible and that's that's searchable for people, so that we don't have to start kind of from scratch and wait until we're a year or two from from now, so that we have a sizable population of cases in any given category. So that said, you've heard enough from me, so I'm going to turn it over to our two of our case investigators, Britta Mamiani and Christopher Band.
Hello, everyone. I'm Britta Momani, and I'm one of the new administrative investigators with the Office of Police Conduct Review. So my background is specifically in the legal field and in employment investigations. I completed my undergrad at University of Minnesota and then interned through both the Capital Pathways program and in the Equity Division of Metropolitan Council. And I also served as a paralegal in the Minnesota Army National Guard for about 6 years. And then I deployed as an administrative law paralegal with the 34th Infantry Division. Currently, I am with OPCR and I am completing my final year of my law degree at Duke. So I will be presenting some of this, as well as the other investigator, Christopher, who will introduce himself shortly. I am not seeing the presentation. Are you all seeing it?
Yes.
Okay, well, I have the presentation on my end, so I'll just pull that up and I'll just hand it over to Chris to go to his introductions then.
So my name is Christopher Band. I graduated from law school in London, England, where I worked in legal aid criminal defense for people who were detained by the police. And then for the past 5 years, I've worked for the Hennepin County Attorney's Office in community engagement before moving over to OPCR. Can I advance the slide myself, or does it go?
You'll need to ask the clerk to advance the slide when you need it to go forward.
So just to go over the current process, which of course you all know better than I do, but the maximum current process is a maximum of 36 annual case summaries. Those are populated from cases closed within the last 365 days. The case selection is currently a random selection of cases made from the closed case population just across the board. The case synopsises are presented with 10 cases each month. There's a brief description of the complaint and the outcome, and then commissioners, you select 3 cases from those synopses, and then you receive the full case summaries that contain more detailed information. The case summaries contain details of the complaint from the date of the incident to its closure, and they allow you to have a deeper look into those cases that you select for discussions of police practices and procedures. And I'll turn over to Britta for the proposed process.
Sure. So generally, the new proposed process relies on alleged violation categorization, randomization, and then representative sampling so that it ultimately will select 60 cases for the commission's review. These 60 cases are selected from a population of complaints that includes closed cases from the prior calendar year, and then this population is generated in January of each year. So the population will then be broken down into representative categories that are based on the alleged violation type. So for example, there could be specific categories for allegations of discrimination or use of force, but then there could also be a general category for policy and procedure violations. And this general category would then encompass a range of violations. For example, failure to activate a body camera or failure to supervise. So then that general category would have a range within it. The representative sample of the 60 cases would then be randomly selected from those violation categories. All 60 of the selected cases would have case summaries for each of them. So then that kind of negates the purpose of a case synopsis, since you are getting that more detailed case summary. Lastly, the 60 cases that are selected for your review will then be randomly grouped into 12 sets of 5, and that's just determining the order in which they'll be presented, in what month they'll be presented. So at the beginning of each month, 5 case summaries will be posted publicly, and this is in an effort to facilitate community discussion. And then next, I'm just going to describe some of the benefits of the proposed case summary process. So if you wouldn't mind going to the last slide, I can't see it, so just let me know when you're there.
We're there.
I'm there.
Perfect. All right, so first, the proposed selection process would increase transparency for the commission, the community, and then also stakeholders by providing the commission with more case summary data. And then also, as I mentioned, publicly posting those 5 case summaries at the beginning of the month to facilitate community engagement with those cases. Next, the proposed process would also utilize data-driven selection procedures and, as I mentioned, representative sampling to enhance the commission's auditing and then police conduct monitoring as well. The commission's ability to ensure police services are delivered in a lawful and non-discriminatory manner would also be strengthened because there would be a 66% increase in the available case summary data, since, as I said, it would move from the 5 cases each month, it would move from the 3 cases, to 5 cases. So instead of a maximum of 36 cases per year, you would have 60 case summaries per year. Lastly, the commission's proactive engagement with the community would be enhanced by the public posting of the case summaries and the availability of increased random and representative case summary data. So that concludes my presentation of OPCR's proposed case selection process. Thank you so much for your time. Chris and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have about the proposal.
Am I muted? I can't even see. It's not showing me anything. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear.
Okay. I do have one question. Like when the case summaries are broken down into the different categories, the like misconduct that falls under like a certain policy, will all of the case summaries included in that month be of the same type of misconduct, like the same type of complaint, or will they just still be random one-offs that just fit in that category. The reason I'm asking is I think it's important for us to have all the same kinds of summaries if we're going to find patterns. Like if we're just going to be looking at 5 different types of misconduct complaints every month, then it's going to be just as difficult going forward with this. And I might add that I'm in favor of this, but it's still going to hamper our ability to identify patterns that we should be addressing if they're not all of the same type of complaint. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for that comment, Chair Jackson. So the proposal was going to be randomly selected cases, but they would be representative of each category. So I think under that model, there's no guarantee that they would all align, but they would be representative of the total population of cases. So I think that the goal there was to aid in the monitoring and then auditing function. And then as Andrew mentioned, all that other data is available so that some of those patterns can be easily assessed from the past data. And then also this is aiding in moving forward the categorization of those cases so that in the future that they can be searchable by category.
I still think it makes more sense to have them aligned. If we're going to be able to conduct oversight and identify patterns where policy changes can be recommended, then I think it's important that they align. Like I don't know, does anybody else have anything? Yeah, Commissioner Sarah.
Thank you both for this presentation. I think it's been really helpful, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you went about this. One issue that we encountered prior to both of you kind of presenting all this to us is that even when we got the more detailed case summaries, so even the 60 that you would be proposing, even then, we didn't get enough information to really do anything. For example, we didn't have even a date range, and I understand you can't identify certain individuals, but there wasn't even a date range. So we couldn't tell, like, are these related? Are they happening way far apart? We don't understand. We didn't have location data, so we couldn't tell, like, is this a problem in a precinct? Is this a problem citywide? We couldn't tell that. We just didn't have enough information. And so my question is, what kind of information is going to be presented to us in these 60 case synopses? Is it going to look exactly the same as before? Because if so, we weren't able to glean any kind of pattern or do any kind of oversight in the past.
Hey, everybody. Can people see me? Sorry, I got my stuff. Or there it is. Okay, good. All right. Okay. So yeah, so I was going to speak to something that Chair Jackson said, and the Commissioner Sarah, I can answer your question as well. I think just from having some of the background before Britta and Chris had come on this project. So with the case summaries, I mean, the whole, the kind of the crux of the case summaries and where the review of that has come from is the audit function of the PCOC. And so the reason that they're randomly selected is to be representative of a larger, population of cases. So when we talk about identifying specific segments and trends and patterns and practices, I think with the case summaries, the more the idea, it's similar to when we do an audit. It's just the review of trying to think of a good example. I mean, like the ketamine like report would be an example where it was just the review of a very high volume of body camera review for a variety of different purposes that actually identified kind of some similar like issues that were taking place during like during these interactions. It wasn't necessarily that we knew it existed. It was more that we looked at kind of a wider spectrum. And so like that's kind of where these initially started from, which is why, like trying to boil it down to, here's if we had, for example, whatever, if it's use of force, it's 60 cases and we had sick, like it was 10% of the total population. We'd have we would ensure there were 6 cases that were use of force, so you'd have an opportunity to identify a representative sample of those those cases. I think what like both of you have asked about is something that certainly like it's still doable. It's something that I think is kind of it's just a little bit different process than the case summaries themselves, where if you wanted to look at something that was exclusive to use of force or policy and procedure or harassment or anything else, Like that's when we go the research and study process, like process route. And so the case summaries exist kind of in and of themselves for you to review, to identify things that the commission may or may not be aware of. I mean, when I'm done too, I'll let Britta and Chris jump into if they have anything to add. But yeah, so I want to make it very clear that, like, doing one does not exclude the other. Where if there's something that's very relevant just because of either some kind of like national attention, local attention, state attention, whatever it may be. Like those are things that can be identified to go the research and study process, where we would then go the deeper dive into that and kind of focus on an area. But the case summaries just in and of themselves are meant to be a representative sample of kind of like of what's coming in, like what do the complaints look like in the universe of like Minneapolis police oversight, so that you all have the opportunity to kind of see, like this is a representative sample of what we're getting like every month, and what's being reviewed and what the outcomes are. And I think that the idea behind freezing them within, the span of a year is just to kind of encapsulate that year. I mean, I do it's similar to, I guess our taxes, not to use an example that everybody's going to hate, but, but obviously when we get toward the end of the year, yep, there might be some that, that went, that were like 10 months old, but I think there's something about being able to encapsulate, the year of 2020. And so knowing that all 60 of your cases are going to come from 2020, and sort of encompass what was done in that year, and that we moved to the second we moved to the next year, 2021. And so you have 60 cases that are encapsulated within 2021, as opposed to kind of, like the randomization of it. And I think with the, as far as like the choosing the synopses, like I think it's, sometimes for some of them, I know you can get a little bit more depending on what the case outcome was. The thing is, in the current climate too, I think a lot of these cases, if there are outcomes, are being a lot more publicly available to begin with. And just, asking people to choose based on a few sentences, it's like the kind of a couple sentences, and it's almost like dating myself, but I remember when you can go to places and get like the free, like, like the mystery bag, for lack of a better term, where people kind of pick, and like, and once you've picked, it's like, like I feel like that's what comes back. And if it's not exactly what people wanted, then it's like, well, I want a different one, like I want to pick. And so it's just kind of, I mean, I don't know what the process was when it was created. I wasn't there. But at the same time, I think that just, by trying to vastly increase the number of things that we're doing, I think the substantive data that will be available, not only to you, but just to members of the public in advance of the meetings too, which is important, since instead of having to kind of everything be reactionary to what the PCOC is doing and what you all are talking about, then they have to come to the next meeting and talk about the cases from before. This gives everyone the opportunity to have kind of the same information in front of them and to have that conversation in real time. But again, like I will apologize for like being long-winded and verbose, for lack of a better term. But Britta, Chris, if you have anything to add, otherwise I'm done.
Thank you, Andrew. I do see that City Clerk Casey Carl had his hand up. Did you still want to make that remark?
Madam Chair, I think I think Andrew covered it, but maybe more succinctly, I would say to your specific question about the 5 presentations being randomized instead of all of the same manner. I think what I understand from discussing this with staff is that even though you'd have 5 separate cases, they would be tracking the 5 areas from month to month, so that over time you are providing within the various types of case complaints that come forward, you are tracking a trend line. They're actually providing you a broader array of data about sample of cases, the sampling of cases, represented sampling of cases across a greater variety, but they're still providing month to month a trend that the group can then, as Andrew said, if there are some trends that you do identify, then you pull that out and refer that for the research project to do the deeper dive. And that's when other cases could be brought to bear that that sampling. You could say we want to dive deeper into there. So certainly the analysts, Britta and Christopher, can correct me, but my understanding is that it's a both and approach, a high level sampling across all the types that does allow you, if you start to define trends over periods, to dig deeper. And so I guess Christopher and Britta, I would ask if I captured that correctly.
Christopher? I see you, Commissioner Pinot. I'm sorry. I just would like for him to answer or address.
Yeah, completely agree with what Casey said. So the idea that when patterns and issues are identified through the PCOC's analysis, that those could be referred to a deeper dive on those specific issues or specific policies that you see being problematic.
Okay, so the way I'm understanding this is that we're going to begin this process, and it will be a process. Like, it will be our examining of these things, and then the patterns will reveal themselves over time. Okay, all right, that makes sense to me. All right, Commissioner Jackson, or Pinot.
I'll take either. I'm happy with it. So I want to echo what Commissioner Sarah mentioned in the beginning about detail of the information. I remember the very first time I looked at these summaries from the synopses, and I asked the question, what were any of the demographics of the individual who filed the complaint? And I was told by someone who knew this better than I did that was not that was like personal information that could potentially identify the person, and therefore we can't disclose that sort of information. I took it at face value, and I still trust what you guys are saying. I do, however, want to just bring up something that I have found, and it's not necessarily germane to what we're talking about here, but I've been looking at the use of force dashboard, the police use of force dashboard that is available on the city's website, publicly disclosed information, and it is all at aggregate, but it does individually record gender, race, specific day, specific time of an incident of a police use of force. And that, to me, is the exact level of information that I'm looking for in some of these synopses. I'm not asking for, individual names and social security numbers. I'm looking for the same level of detail of what I'm seeing in sort of this police use of force dashboard. Like, for instance,
We can't hear you.
You muted yourself.
Yep, you hit mute.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For instance, I found one randomly. May 15th in 2018 at about 2:00 in the morning, a Native American female was the subject of an arrest. There was bodily force used by the police, and there was no reported injury by the subject. To me, that's exactly the type of level of information that I was looking for when I initially started asking these questions of, I would like to know the race and ethnicity, the gender, and I mean, even if possible, an age range as well, would be so helpful for me. And since we're starting this conversation about what is, useful and what is not, to me, this demonstrates that it is possible to get that information. It is allowable to be disclosed, and I would love to see it.
I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you for that comment, Commissioner Pinot. Andrew Hawkins, you have your hand raised, sir.
Yeah, so no, I completely understand that there's some confusion across the board, and some of it too. Like, we've always pushed for as much as we can possibly get, and like, I'm right there with you. We'll keep doing it. I think some of it's probably from the standpoint of, like, they were written this way for a long time, and that's like very seldom is that like a response for why we do things. It's like, well, we've always done it this way. Like, okay, well, we need to reassess it, and that's something that we're looking at right now. With the police use of force dashboard and like knowing a little bit about it, since it's adjacent to ours, not quite the same. Like some of what they can do, like I believe, like police reports, like if once filed, it's public data. It's considered public data. So I know there are some constraints with us and the Data Practices Act, and like I say the Data Practices Act because I don't mean us. I mean literally the state law that like limits what we can share about complainants. In terms of when people file, like what we're allowed to share. However, like one thing that you said initially that I know we capture already in our portal, that there's no reason that we couldn't do it for this, and especially if we're able to do that. Well, not if we're able, we will like have the database of complaints by topic. The aggregate data, like that's been kind of our workaround for everything, is if there's some things that we cannot share, it's like it once we get to that critical mass, like it seems like we hit a point where evidently like we're just allowed to do it. As far as like the state data practices board is concerned. So I mean, again, it's like that can be a point of frustration sometimes because we have to get to that critical mass in order to do it. But I think if we're able to take all of our everything that's been public up to now from 2013 to now, there has to be enough in there that we have that critical mass for most of those cases where we're allowed to share that information. And so I think that's something that would be very useful to put on the dashboard so that you can isolate, like again, if they're a representative sample, of the wider case universe, then like what you see in terms of the aggregate data should be a representative sample that you can extrapolate, to apply to that subset. So Yeah, again, like I know that's again, there's a lot of moving pieces and there's, like a lot of different areas, but part of my, the stance on this too, I've seen the same dashboards you have. And it's like, well, if they're able to do this, it's like, come on, you got to let us do it. But some of it comes down to, it's more when a person files, like once you file it, when you file a police report and when you file a police complaint, it's like, they're two different entities that are treated differently, and, and what we're able to share and what we're not, are just different things. And, yeah, it's a maze sometimes, but one of the other things, sorry, and again, I'm being long-winded, I'm sorry. But like one of the things I was gonna like say as well is just to make it clear is like when these cases are coming in, like we're definitely gonna, this is something we're with the dashboard similar to the police conduct oversight, like dashboard that we have right now. We want to make sure that this is something that's done in real time so that, when these cases are done, they can go in, and we can work with IT to kind of make sure that this is all, like data that's being handled in real time, is publicly available. I mean, just we are pushing, we've had meetings with multiple groups to try to make sure that as much as we can possibly make public is public. And so we're going to keep going in that direction. And I think that having like this kind of, again, it's publicly available, like it's there. And so just like being able to put all of those cases into some kind of a dashboard that's functional that people can go in and see, like the work's already done. It's just it's standing it up on the back end. And so I mean actually having some like shout out to Christopher for having a little bit of a tech background, to be able to come in and help me with some of that stuff. So that'll definitely get like I think it'll be really, really exciting when it's done. And I'd really like to get it done sooner than later because it'll answer a lot of questions as opposed to us having to do it.
And thank you guys. I know you're, we're all on the same side here. We want to have free flow of information with all of this. It's just worth saying it out in the open. Like we clearly are all concerned about equity in public safety here. And the first step in trying to correct for inequities in public safety is knowing about the inequities in public safety, right? So
Yep.
thank you guys for the work that you're doing, and we're happy to help push the message along as best we can.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's appreciated, and like I mean, Britta and Christopher can confirm it or choose not to comment, but like I've literally like apologized to them this week for gushing over like having them, I mean, two like absolutely amazing staff people to help do this stuff. So I mean, it's been a long time coming, and so I think having again, just having the resources to do this kind of stuff and make sure that we're able to do kind of new and creative things is incredibly important. Without the work suffering. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like we're an enforcement agency, and so we need to keep focusing on that. But I think, the more people and resources we have, and especially when we get absolutely fantastic people like Britta and Chris, it's been, yeah, like I'm gonna shut it off before I keep going about you two. So
Thank you. Commissioner Sarah.
Thank you so much. And kind of building on this conversation, under the Minnesota statutes 13.05, subdivision 4, clause B, just to get real technical with you, authority entities and individuals who are specifically designated by governments to review private data or non-public data are allowed to do it. And this commission is one such entity. We're a designated group. As Mr. Carl said, we have an audit function. It's what we are meant to do. Also, our operating rules specifically have a process that complies with data practices law and also the Minnesota open meeting law. So it's like a Venn diagram of the laws we have to follow that allows us to review private or non-public data and still comply with all the existing laws. Basically, what happens is we can discuss it privately. We close up the meeting when we're discussing private data, so it's not disseminated publicly. And then we keep a record of it, and then we open up the meeting and continue the discussion, essentially is what the rules say. And that's exactly what open meeting law says. So there is a function for us to view private data or non-public data, even on top of like the, Andrew, did you say summary data? Like that, those high level statistics. So what we really need, I think, is we need to just move forward having more information. And I really like the plan put forward. I really like the thoughtfulness of it.
Yes.
One piece that I feel is missing, which would be addressed by looking at, non-public data, is being able to track if there are certain officers who are a problem. Let me just name Derek Chauvin having this series of excessive force complaints for which he was not disciplined, but there was there was like a steady flow of complaints. And if an officer was getting 3 or 4 complaints a year, that would be statistically significant, even though some complaints are just erroneous and factually, not substantiated, still that would be statistically significant. And I think as the oversight body, as the audit function, we need to be able to track if there's a certain, problem officer, problem precinct, problem beat, like whatever may or may not be the case, that is something we need to track. And so I would like to see that incorporated into this plan moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Sarah. Attorney Fussy, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. If you recall, I think a number of months ago, my office gave an opinion regarding the bifurcated nature of the Office of Police Conduct Review, and it is the opinion of the City Attorney's Office, and I'm not going to rehash all the arguments, but you do not fit this group does not fit that statutory definition, and you do not have access to non-public data. And that's simply the position that has been established, and that the position that the City Attorney's Office holds to. And therefore, that's why all the efforts are to provide the amount of data that we can in terms of aggregate and summary and non-identifying data. But unless that law is changed, that's the position of the city, that this group, due to the bifurcated nature and the intentional choices made by the city in constructing this group, simply does not have the power to be privileged to see non-public data.
Well,
Mr. Fussy, can I really quick, just to be clear, the bifurcation you're talking about is that responsibility that meets the statutory definition is given to the review panels. So there is a body that has the ability to look at data. It's not the PCOC, it's the review panels.
That's correct, Mr. Carl.
Commissioner Sarah.
Thank you. I believe that's the city attorney's opinion. It's not the position of the city council who passed the ordinance creating the PCOC and our audit function. And furthermore, the 2018 rules for the PCOC lay out a process to view and discuss non-public and private data. So why would that exist if we were never allowed to view it, never intended to do it, anything of the sort? And I think it's important to call out in this space that the city attorney's office as a whole has some serious conflicts of interest in this space, in that they may want to keep certain kinds of information private for litigation reasons, for prosecution reasons. The city attorney does a lot of different things in the city. And really the entity that would decide whether or not we have this authority is the city council. And the city council did pass the ordinance creating us, giving us this authority, giving us this audit function. They've given us this task to do oversight, and we can't do it if we don't have data.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Sarah. Would you like to address that, Attorney Fussy? Because I come down solidly on the opposition with the city attorney's opinion.
Okay. And I understand that, but that is the opinion of my office, and it hasn't changed, and it's been consistent. The operational rule that Commissioner Sarah is referencing is template language that out of the open meeting law that refers to when a body that's subject to the open meeting law has authority or jurisdiction to review non-public data, the steps that they must take. And it's the opinion of, it's been the city's position that this body does not have that power in the respect that you're referencing. And, I fully understand and appreciate that others may see it differently. I'm just relaying what the opinion of the city is on this matter. And, that's basically all that I have to add.
And you are totally within your rights to have that opinion and hold that position, but that doesn't necessarily make it the rules that we need to follow. Like, it's clearly laid out what our responsibilities are in our operational rules. And the city attorney's office continues to obstruct us in the fulfilling of our duties. And I, for one, have, I'm getting a little fed up with it. You know, just, I'm not trying to be professional here. I'm getting fed up with this. Commissioner Pinot.
Hi. In an effort to reach a resolution in this conflict, again, I'm not a legal expert here, but
Neither am I.
could we? I mean, it's clear there's discourse between the opinion of the city attorney's office and members of this commission, and members of this commission have cited that city council has decreed something. Can we ask city council in some sort of way to formally confirm this, so that way we can determine whether or not we're right and we do have these rights, or the city attorney is correct and we in fact do not have these rights? Because I think that would be a great way to come to an understanding of where we're at. Is that allowable? What's the process for that?
Commissioner Jacobson, do you have an answer for that?
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer, but I want to say I do agree with Commissioner Pino. This is, at this point, it's almost above our head, and we need the powers that be to make some policy changes allowing us to have access to that information. And it's going to take, like you said, the city council meeting with the city attorney's office to work that out.
Okay, thank you. What role should the PCOC as a body, or myself as chair, I don't know, play in facilitating that conversation? Can we direct the city council or members of that body to address the PCOC along with the city attorney? I don't think that we should be excluded from that conversation. I think that we need to know and we need to be present for that. So I don't know. Can I, you know, I'm sorry that I don't know. I'm sorry that I don't know, but I just don't. How do we go about this, Commissioner Sarah?
I have a proposal. I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that Chair Jackson formally writes or addresses the city council and asks them whether they intended that we are an authorized entity under Minnesota statute 13.05 subdivision 4 clause B that is allowed to view private and non-public data with the limitations,
Right.
under law, and then let the council tell us if that was their intent by passing the ordinance that created us.
Okay.
And yeah.
Does the body of the commission agree that I, as chair, should take this on and address the city council? Because I'm more than willing to do that. I think we need to put this to rest once and for all.
I second.
Okay, then I will do that. If not by the end of this week, by the end of next week.
You have a roll call vote on the motion. And
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We have a motion and a second, and now may we call the roll?
Commissioner Sarah,
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson,
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire,
Aye.
Commissioner Pino,
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks,
Aye.
Chair
Jackson.
Aye.
There are 7 ayes.
Okay, thank you. That motion passed. And are there any other commissioners, anyone else present here that have any concerns or remarks that they'd like to make about this, the new process? Okay, do we need to direct the OPCR to continue with this work and formalize it?
But Madam
Casey?
Chair,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, the staff was not necessary, I don't believe, to have a formal motion in this regard. We were really trying to get a temperature check from the group if we're on the right track. I
Yeah.
think I speak for the group when I say it sounds like we've gotten your thumbs up, right? That this is more in line with a better process. So if that's true, what we'll do is take the feedback we've gotten tonight, and we'll now, as I mentioned, start to develop the legs that go into building that system so that we can bring that back and start the process. I will also, in terms of managing expectations, say this is a brand new process. So as we get going, of course, there'll be some rough starts, and we'll have to all, very patiently work together to refine that process as we get going. But I think that the staff have outlined, I hope you'll agree, what sounds like a better and more robust process of both tracking across the spectrum of case presentations or types, but also allowing a better ability to drill down into detail if and when those trends are identified. So I think that that system, as we proposed it, is much more in line with what we've been hearing this year from this group. We will now proceed to develop that system and bring back for you that process. And certainly there were a lot of other discussions tonight that we'll go back and listen to the recording again to make sure that we're getting some of those finer nuanced points as well that I know that Commissioner Pino, Commissioner Sarah, and others brought forward. So thank you for your attention tonight on behalf of Andrew and his incredible team. They've done a lot of work on this, and I appreciate their work to improve that system. So thanks to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Your effort, the time put into this was obvious. And I have not heard any objections. So we're all in a thumbs up position with this, right? Let's move forward with it. Okay. All right, great. So with that, and without any objection, I will direct the clerk to receive and file this report as well. Now, our next item of business, the topic of an after-action review of officer-involved shootings. I'd like to open that discussion to any remarks any of us would like to make. And I will begin. There have been several emails from a member of the public. And when I say several, I really mean several. In June of 2019, the judge who presided in the Mohammed Noor case, Judge Quintain, asked several questions of the chief regarding policing in Minneapolis that jurors felt had not been answered during the trial. It's now been 2 years, and we haven't received any answers to those questions. It's been 1 year since the chief addressed the city council, and I quote, "It's certainly important to learn from those, and so I plan to do this." I would like to ask the question, when, because it's been 2 years and 1 year, I mean, within 2 years, but it's been 2 years from Mohammed Noor and 1 year since the chief addressed the city council saying that he thought it was crucial. But we haven't heard anything. We haven't received any reports. Chief Arredondo has not been here to talk to the PCOC or the public about what they've learned. And not only are we all commissioners on this commission, but we're also members of the public. Like we all are, including the chief. So I just think that we deserve the answers that we need to hear from Chief Arredondo about what they've learned. Have they even begun to analyze or study any of that to bring any answers back to the table? The lack of response from the MPD and the OPCR to the concerns of the public are quite disturbing to me. So I just would really like for the chief to provide us some answers to that. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I have a couple of other things that I want to discuss tonight, but I'm going to stop there and let's just address this. So I know Commissioner Sarah, I know that you had some opinions about this. So if I could ask you to go first and address anything.
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you
No,
on the spot, but okay.
I think I was the one who, I don't know if I made a motion or started a discussion following the police shooting of Dalal Id on I think December 30th of last year. So we discussed potentially having a special meeting. Ultimately, we did not have a special meeting. Ultimately, I believe what was decided is that Director Jafar would follow up with us and give us a presentation kind of describing after action process for that particular investigation. I just, I just want to say right now, I'm not sure that Director Jafar, how much she can share if the investigation is ongoing. So I'm not sure that was the best plan of action for us to take. That's a consideration around data and so on. So I just have a lot of concerns. I think this entity should have discussions following a police killing. I think it's totally appropriate. I also have questions about why the BCA is the designated authority to do those investigations. They are presented as a neutral agency, but in fact, they are not neutral. In fact, the MPD and the BCA work very closely together. They serve on joint task force together. They do drug investigations together. They have SWAT team. Like they do all this work together. So to say they're neutral is not accurate. So I have a lot of questions. Some are general, such as why is the BCA the designated authority? What's the process for after action review? What information, if any, can Director Jafar provide us? And then I had some more specific questions about the shooting of Dalal Id, and my specific questions around that were, understanding that he was the target of an investigation. Why was that felony stop conducted in such a very high traffic? I mean, that is a very dense little corner, and it was rush hour actually. Like there was families coming in and out of that station. My husband and I were there to get a gallon of milk shortly before that happened. I mean, this is a very dense area, so I had some specific questions around that. I apologize for going so deep. Those were my thoughts. Several.
Please do. Yeah, we need to go deep.
Yeah.
The floor is open for any commissioner or anyone else for that matter.
Well, I just think these are questions that we need to keep pressing on, because as another member, I hope I'm not frozen, but as another member of the public reminded us that we should be able to, participate in performance review of Chief Arredondo, and possibly, we are this, we are the civilian voice to a certain extent. I think we deserve, I don't know exactly how it fits into what our designated authorities are, but I do think it's an important role for us to keep pushing for these answers. And if we don't get them, that should be reflected in our participation of performance reviews, and something that should be made known to different entities in the city.
Yes, that's also something that I was going to address tonight, was in our operational rules, that we actually, not only do we have the power, but we have the duty to participate in the Chief of Police's performance review. And that is coming up in December of this year. And I would like to formally request, and I will probably do this in an email, or I can direct the city staff to, if that's more appropriate, to formally request a notification of the date of when this will take place, and an invite to include the PCOC in Chief Arredondo's performance review. It was brought to my attention, to our attention, that has never happened. That the mayor holds the chief's performance review and excludes us from that process, and no more. Like, I'm here to say that no, we're not going to allow that. that it is actually our duty. It's not that we're trying to push ourselves in somewhere where we don't belong or we're not welcome. We've been mandated to do that. So we will be doing that. Oh God, I can't hardly even read my own writing. Never mind. I'll just leave it there. I just want to make a comment that the lack of response from the OPCR and Commander Wheeler, the joint supervisors, to questions and emails that they receive, it seems to me like just the continuation of what we're here to disrupt. Like, we want transparency and we want accountability. And when people are asking questions 12, 13 times in a row with the same question, and they're receiving no response whatsoever, not even a please stop, like just no response, like is smacks of arrogance and lack of respect, and is if you think that you're above being accountable to the people that you serve. And how do we go forward? How do we resolve the issues that brought us here in the first place if the departments that are charged with police conduct review can't be bothered to address the concerns and questions of not only this commission, but the public? I just don't know how we're supposed to do what the city says they want us to do. I mean, maybe that's just me. Am I crazy? I don't know. So I am also formally requesting that any recommendations received by the PCOC, or I mean the OPCR from civilian review panels be made available to the PCOC. We're supposed to be working together, but we're not. We don't receive any type of communication from the OPCR about what is coming from these civilian review panels. So I'm formally requesting that information, because I think that we all need to start working together. We're not enemies. We're supposed to be in partnership, but that is not what's happening in practice. At least that's not what I'm seeing. Commissioner Jacobson?
Chair Jackson, I think you hit the nail on the head, spot on with that. We are supposed to be in a partnership and we're not getting any cooperation. And I think it ultimately goes back to broken relationships. We have, right now, everything is so, unfortunately, political. We have the city council and we have law enforcement and people within both organizations that um, don't get along or don't answer questions or don't provide transparency or can't sit in the same room and actually listen. I think that there's a lot of, unfortunately, right now with everyone pointing fingers. And we are part of a commission that stems from the city council. And I think that we are probably not being um, treated the way we should be treated as an organization, and we're not being responded to because we are part of that. And that's just my opinion. I don't think it takes a brain surgeon to see that. I'm sure many others share the same opinion. And I think it's going to start with building the relationship. We're all going to have to sit at a table with people that we don't necessarily um, think align with our points of view. We're going to have to actually talk through these things instead of yelling at each other. It's all about building the relationships. As long as we can try and make an effort to do that, I think that we can get more people to actually want to talk to us and want to participate and want to work with us as far as changing policies and giving us information, because they realize that we're here to help and we're part of the people. And what they're getting from us is they're getting a window into what constituents of Minneapolis feel, and what they want to understand and what we need questions to. And that with us, they have a way to um, rebuild their relationships with the community and community trust. So I think it's going to start with us reaching out and making other efforts to rebuild the relationship so that we can rebuild the trust on both sides.
Commissioners, please share your thoughts. Like if you're opposed or if you're for, I mean, we need to hear from you. Commissioner Sarah?
Thanks. Thank you, Commissioner Jacobson. I appreciate those remarks, and I definitely agree with you. Part of the difficulty in oversight and policy review and procedure recommendations is sitting in that difficult space and having really difficult conversations. And they're really uncomfortable, or can be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Can be. So I appreciate you bringing that up. You know, I think at a minimum, city officials need to answer our questions. I just think that's the bare minimum of what we need to move forward, especially extremely basic questions such as who are the current joint supervisors. We need to know the information in order just to do our work and to communicate appropriately, to bring the right people to the table, to build trust, like all that kind of stuff. So, we really need that response from city people. I have invited various people to speak in my committee meetings, my subcommittee meetings, and often the city officials decline. Some have come and provided like fantastic information and just really helped us move the ball forward, and it's been great. And what I want to say is, like, when Director Rivero attended, when City Attorney Marilyn Hang attended, it's not as though either of those directors just gave us the information we wanted to hear and we're all like singing kumbaya together. It was not that at all. They were providing us with information from their very specific functions and helping us understand specific issues within the city and specific roadblocks. And, then we had a path forward to kind of address those roadblocks. And it was great. And I just think we need a lot more of that.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking. Commissioner Pinot?
Yeah, not going to try to rehash anything that I was already said. I agree with everything that the 3 and 4 of you have said, but I'm just hearkening back to our former chair, Afshin Fruzan, who left us with a final quote of saying, "We wield a paintbrush, not a hammer." And I think that means a lot more in this sort of context. A lot of what we can do, the potential of this commission, is the power in asking questions. But as we can see, those questions, when they're not heard and not responded to, there isn't much paint in our paintbrush right now. So we need to, think of the long-term sustainability of this group and legitimacy of this group, and foster that sort of dialogue that Commissioner Jacobson was talking about. And sometimes with people we may not see eye to eye with, and really make sure that we are trying to show that we are all on the same side of making sure that people stay safe, people are heard, people are able to call upon the city in some sort of capacity when they're having some of the worst days of their lives. And if there is a mistake done by that responding entity, that they're able to find a way to address those grievances in a way that is both respectful and provide some sort of justice. And I truly do believe we're all on the same side of that. It's just what end of that spectrum you're on. And I think if we make a concerted effort to work with entities in and around the city that right now aren't very favorable of us, and we show that we are just trying to, do our part and make the city a better place, we can't lose, guys. So that's all I have. Let's work that paintbrush a little bit better. I'm up for it.
Well, I thank you for that. I think that being able to sit down and have a conversation is paramount to us building the relationships. And it's very difficult to know, do we need to change the color that we're painting with? Do we need a different width paint? I mean, what do we need when questions are repeatedly asked and we're not receiving any response? Like, I'm not quite sure how to move forward with that, because I think it's impossible. It takes both parties to be in communication, not just one continually asking. We need the other party to respond to us and treat us respectfully. It's just common courtesy. That's the bare minimum. It's just common courtesy. So anyone have any suggestions about how we can, do we need to paint with a bolder stroke? Do we need to just, I mean, what is it that we need to do? I know I'm continuing with the paintbrush analogy, because I mean, what is it that we need to do to get a response? We've asked politely. Members of the public have begun being very sarcastic and rude, actually. And we still are not getting a response. I'm stymied. And Commissioners Sparks and Crockett, I would really like to hear what you're thinking right now, what your feelings and opinions and views are right now. Commissioner Sparks?
Yeah, so I've thought a lot about that, and I've had a hard time coming up with, the why and the what's wrong is easier to see than the how. We have had some success in getting some people from some of these offices to join meetings and kind of talk about what they do, sort of avoiding the more difficult topics and issues of the day. I know that that's a little contentious and they're less likely to want to discuss that kind of thing. But what if we started with that sort of outreach again? We've been able to get people from the chief's office and I think a little bit of participation from like OPCR. And what if we just try that again? We ask people to join some future meetings, kind of talk generally about what they do, how it factors in, why it's important, and we start there. Is that something that's doable, or do people have other ideas? Because that, to me, that's the easiest, least offensive way to start, but I'm willing to believe there are other ways too.
Well, I think that having these different city officials come and speak to us about what they do is, that's a good starting place. I mean, we would learn more about their office and their functions. But well, I mean, it might be a good starting place. That would be the jump off point.
That's kind of what I mean, like, it's the starting point, but we
yeah.
got to keep the engagement going, and that's going to be the hard part.
That's
They show
one way
up
to
once
start.
and then we don't see them again.
Yeah.
That doesn't get us anywhere.
Right, because explaining to us what they do isn't necessarily going to answer the questions that have been asked. But we can come back to that. Commissioner Crockett.
Yeah, so I would say first off, like everything everybody's said essentially is right on point. Just the points about transparency, And I think for us to get somewhere, it definitely comes down to relationships, and maybe a place to start too would be some of the individuals who have already connected with us, and kind of seeing if we can get those connections to speak up on our behalf or something like that. Because maybe they have a little bit more pull and can advocate for us. That would be just something I would think about, to see if we can pull any of those strings or connect with anybody like that.
Okay. Andrew?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not muting myself. Like one of the things I was going to suggest that could be really helpful, because again, and this is something that's lost when we are, in this remote status, when we're not in the office and we don't have the chance to interact with each other. Is to actually kind of getting to put some faces to the work, which I think like Britta and Chris were very helpful this evening in doing. But I think just getting to kind of meet some of the staff that are doing this and understanding what their role is in it. Because one of the things that I think, like, I don't mean lost by this group. I think just kind of in this scope of this, we keep talking about civilian oversight, and and I mean that's the thing. Like Britta and Chris are civilians. I'm a civilian. Like everybody in OPCR is a civilian. But for any complaint that comes into the city of Minneapolis, like it goes through no less than 3 civilians. We have our intake investigators, who are both, like two incredibly, like talented women of color, who are looking at all of this, that have like, one of them has a social work background, one of them has a background with, equity in within the city. And like, so they'll do the intake of the case. After that, the case is going to go to our body camera analyst, so it's going to go to another civilian step in the process. After that, it's going to go to the joint supervisors for review, where we have OPCR and a civilian who's going to review that. Anything that goes to investigation, again, like, and that's where, depending on what the person selected, it can go, either to a sworn or a civilian investigator. But we have our civilians. You just met 2 of them this evening. So I think that, like that's something too, where it's, I say that not to, again, like not to rebut anything, because I don't think anybody said anything that's worth rebutting, but in terms of allegations. But I just want to make sure, because part of me is like, I don't know how much of that is clear. Because normally, when we operate, and I think that that's something that's been at play with this remote operation, for commissions kind of in general, is just not having the ability to see those people and just have those kind of like fleeting interactions, where you bump into them when you're, pre-meeting, or when you're leaving the meeting, or, just in this, oh, what do you do? And, that's where you learn all that stuff. And that's something with these online meetings, like we log in and like, we hit it, we start going immediately. So we just haven't had a chance to do that kind of stuff. And it's, and again, that's why part of me is just like, as soon as it's safely possible, I would love to return to, at City Hall operations, wherever we're meeting. I don't care. It's like, I just want to meet in person again, because I think that there's so much that's lost when that's taken away. But at the same time, it's just one of those things where, not knowing when that's going to happen, I think that being able to do that sooner than later is going to be incredibly, beneficial just to everybody, just for all of you to get a chance to meet those individuals. And like Britta and Chris did a great job of it tonight, just coming in and giving that presentation, but like also you learn a little bit about their backgrounds, but just having those opportunities to talk more. Again, like it's in the scope of speaking what I can speak to, it's like I'm just going to speak to our staff, and that's that's kind of my area of responsibility. And like, I know that a lot of them are, they love doing this work. They bring a passion to do this work, and they're as committed to it as, as any of you are. And so I think that getting a chance to kind of, interact with them, and, everybody to connect is going to be immensely helpful, as far as, how we go forward, and, making sure that we're able to do this. In a way where like we've kind of taken down that wall of, because again, a blank face or a picture, or, a letter for a name, on a screen isn't always the best way to interact with somebody. And, and I think that it creates this vacuum that in the current climate, a lot of times I think worse assumptions can get assumed. And that's something that I think we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to not, to not allow. So, for whatever that's worth, I wanted to put that out there, that I think, tonight being, I guess example one of two people being there to have a conversation with you. I think we want to kind of continue to do what we can to connect people and have those conversations.
Yeah. Part of my professional life is actually building relationships. Like, that's what I do, and that's what I get paid for, so it's very difficult, this not being able to come together and breathe the same air as everyone else. Like, you miss the nuances. You're not we're the availability of seeing each other in person, and idiosyncrasies and like, you know, things like that that make a person who they are, and hearing their voice, not over the internet, but actually person to person, and being able to ask questions in the moment, you know, I don't know, all the elements that go into building relationships. There's a huge part of it missing with this. And I do believe I'll be so glad when we are able to come back to face-to-face meetings, because I believe that probably a lot of this will change when we are back in that capacity. I think that we'll have more time to speak to one another before meetings and after meetings. And well, no, we can't do that because of the open meeting laws, but you know what I mean? We can be more personable with one another than the constraints that are put on us by teams. You know, as useful as this medium has been to continue with life, I, for one, will be thrilled when we are able to go back to meeting person to person. I think that will help to alleviate some of these issues. Commissioner Sarah. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree. Like, it was so great to have the presentation today and to learn more about the staff and who's doing the work. You know, I just want to say a little bit about power dynamics for a moment too, because in the active relationship building, it's important to consider, is everyone on equal footing? Does someone have more power than another person in the relationship, and how to navigate that? And we, on this commission, we're volunteers. We don't have any kind of independent access to data or information. We're not paid to do this work. And we were appointed, and I think everyone on this commission is very mission centered. You know, we were appointed to do this work. We're here. We're missing time with our families. We're missing time doing other stuff. And that work, that volunteerism, and that civic duty merits respect from city employees.
Absolutely.
And we don't control the data. We don't have the power around that. And so I think the onus is really on city staff to treat us with a level of respect and understand that we're all trying to do our job. And if we ask a question, it's because we don't know the answer. And we just need help getting to that answer. And it's not a threat or a challenge or a, you know, like, we're just trying to do our job. And you know, when we have these topics, these difficult topics, like we had a presentation on traffic stops, that's a difficult topic, and city officials were, you know, declined to participate. Well, that's sort of like cutting off your nose to spite the face, you know, like,
right.
Yeah, maybe the conversation would have been uncomfortable. Maybe there would have been some back and forth. But you also lost an opportunity to tell us what your perspective is. This leadership, tell us what your perspective is. If there's a roadblock that we're not seeing because we're volunteers, tell us what that roadblock is. We don't know. I think open dialogue is really important, and I think the onus is on city officials to participate in that.
I would like to stipulate that there are some city staff that do a much better job of engaging in respectful communication with us than others. I would just like to stipulate that for the record. There are some that I very much enjoy, that are very responsive, and then there are others who, I don't know, appear to believe they live in a bubble and that they don't understand the impact that they have when they don't engage with us. But for those of you that do, you are truly appreciated. You're truly appreciated. Any other comments? I know it's almost 8, but other than this, I don't think we have anything else on the agenda for this evening.
Just to that end, I appreciate you, Chair Jackson, going to the city council, because I think part of one of the issues is none of us are, well, not all of us work for the city, and we don't have those established relationships, and it's easier to be dismissive of us because you don't, people don't know who we are, and this commission might not have been historically exercising all the powers that it could. And so that's something that why we want to build relationships. Also, there can be a benefit to having a pushier side, just to establish, what this commission can do and should be doing, because there's going to be other people replacing us later. And so hopefully they'll get to step into a role where there is communication with different entities, or the entities that are not responsive now kind of see some of the abilities or I don't want to call it the powers, but maybe the powers of this commission. And so I think relationship building is important, but being pushy in certain arenas kind of helps show our value, and might not to everybody, but might get more responsiveness out of certain city staff members.
Yeah, I believe that we do have a responsibility to be assertive. Like, we have been imbued with certain powers, and along with those powers come our duties, our responsibilities. So I absolutely believe that there are times when we do need to assert that, passive or aggressive, neither one work, assertive gets results. And I'm hoping that that's what we're doing, what I've taken on to address the city council, that we're being assertive, with wanting a definitive answer to this question, because I believe we have been given that power. I believe that we do have oh God, I just lost the word. No, okay, that we are allowed to, that we do have the permission, rather, to view that private data in certain circumstances, or arenas, however you want to say that. Like, we can close the meeting for a moment, be able to look at that away from the eyes of the public, and then open the meeting back up. Like, it's there. And the way our operational rules and the ordinance that established us in the first place, I believe the language lays out that we are an entity that has that privilege to view that. So I know that opinion differs from the opinion of the city attorney's office, but opinions, we all know the saying about opinions. So I would like to have that answered once and for all. And I mean, if the city council says, nope, guys, that's not what we meant, then we'll need to push for changes in legislation to change the Privacy Data Act to include us in that. I mean, I don't know of any other path forward for that. Some of you genius people here can maybe help me out with that. But I think that we've had a very, very robust, open, and enlightening discussion tonight. I really, really like what Britta and Christopher have accomplished. Their work involved in helping us change how we view case summaries and the way they're going to be analyzed and put forward. I'm really hopeful. I'm really looking forward to being able to go with this process and see how it's going to allow us to look deeper, look behind the curtain, so to speak, and do a better job of actually what we're supposed to be doing, which is isolating patterns, and helping to better the way policing is conducted in Minneapolis, and possibly maybe get rid of some bad officers. I mean, I know that's not directly our job, but we can influence that. So, like I said before, okay, it's 8:02. We really don't have anything else on the agenda for this evening. Are we allowed to adjourn a few minutes early? I think I've asked that before. Commissioner Sarah.
I think we can adjourn early, but I would still like some sort of update on well, police involved shootings and specifically the shooting of Dalal. I would still like to know, is that information forthcoming?
Right, I want to know that too. I wanted to ask, I thought I did, like how do I address that as chair, or do we as a body request that, and from whom? The chief? Like the chief is the one who was directed to come up with the answers, and he hasn't, or if he has, he hasn't shared them with us or the city council. I don't know if they would have any data about the id shooting yet, though. Not what I'm talking about, like the Commissioner Jacobson, I see your hand up. Do you have an answer for us?
I just want some clarity. Are we requesting an after action report, or are we requesting information on why they chose the location, when they chose it, and how they chose it, or what exactly are we asking as far as more information regarding that?
Think all of the above.
Okay.
I think, yeah, why they would choose that location at that time of day. I mean, if they had already set up the meet there when they arrived and they saw the environment was not conducive, then I'm sure they could have called it off and met at another time. Like, why was that even allowed to happen? Why was that location chosen? A gas station in a family-oriented neighborhood, I don't understand that. When the possibility of shots being fired, that's not public safety, that's endangering the public. I would like to know those thoughts that go through people's heads that decide that that's okay. So to answer your question, I think all of the above. Commissioner Pinot.
Hi. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is investigation is still undergoing, right? We talked about that in the beginning of this conversation. So, I mean, potentially, maybe we should just ask a more administrative question, like to staff, of what is in bounds, so to speak. What are we allowed to ask? What are we not allowed to ask? Given the current status of any would-be investigation. I assume there is one still pending based off of this conversation that was saying. I just don't know personally. Is that a fair place to start? I would. The reason why I'm asking is because I don't want us to start asking all these questions and have the answer being, I can't answer that for you.
Right. I agree. And I think that I was using the id case just as a generic example. We have plenty of other investigations that have been closed that we can be provided answers for.
And I agree. And we could always, instead of, if we want to dodge that situation of it's currently, pending, we can't give you an answer, we can always ask the question in the abstract. That's kind of like the role of us, right? Like we want to ask questions at the trend level, at the macro level. So, I mean, as long as we formulate our questions in the abstract in generalities, then totally fine with me. Please continue.
Okay. Commissioner Sparks?
Yes. I just wanted to sort of echo Commissioner Pino's comments just about the abstract. It's probably important to remember there's a good chance these other areas, they don't want to talk to us, and they don't have to. Nobody's making them. Nobody's going to give them a pat on the back or a special prize or a cookie for talking to us. We have to either make them want to talk to us or at least be so inoffensive that they don't mind talking to us. Nobody's going to make them I think that's why a lot of questions tend to get ignored. So I think Commissioner Pino made a good point.
Okay. Would any of you like to take on that task of crafting the questions? Jackson, you're looking like, okay, what did she just say?
Well, it's a very leading question, and that's why I was smiling. I mean, I don't want to just suddenly propose that Commissioner Sarah bring this up, but I remember she was the one who brought this about, and it seems motivated by it. But I don't want to call you out if that's something that you can't fit on your plate. I know you're also very active.
I mean, we can wait if you're agreeable, Commissioner Sarah, until after the ID investigation is closed. But I would like to go back to what I said in the beginning. I was talking about Mohammed Noor, and the chief addressing the city council a year ago, talking about how this is crucial for us to learn from. Okay, what have you learned then? From then to now? Like, that's a pretty straightforward, simple question. And if you can't discuss any investigations that are ongoing, then don't. Just address what you can. I think that's pretty simple. Commissioner Sarah?
Perhaps one question is an invitation to the chief
Mm-hmm.
or his staff or whomever, to come and say, like, this is what we've learned in the past, 5 years or 4 years since Mohammed Noor. Perhaps that's one question. My recollection from the meeting where we discussed the ID shooting in particular, might have been January, was that Director Jafar was going to come and give us sort of an update and kind of tell us what she could tell us, or provide an update. So maybe the question is just to staff. I don't know which staff, but like whatever staff.
That's where I'm struggling. I don't know how
can
to.
You give us an update on after actions? Like, we just need to have information about that. And when can we talk about in like particular cases? I don't know that the investigation is ongoing. I just wanted to kind of flag that because I didn't want to say that she should tell us things that she cannot tell us. That's not fair. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So, Casey or Andrew, what city official, what staff do we address this to? How do we get Chief Arredondo to come or someone from his office to come and answer our questions?
Madam Chair, I'll take a wild stab at trying to touch on a myriad of issues that I think are pending in front of the body right now.
Okay.
First and foremost, I've heard a reference a couple times to questions that aren't answered. I'm not aware of questions that are not answered, or are pending without a response of some kind. Specific to the Dalal Eid case, I will remind this body that the motion asking Director Jafar to report back was premised on the fact that the case was closed. So Director Jafar cannot respond until that case is closed by the police department. And even then, the motion by this body was using the data that is public and can be reported. So the fact that it hasn't come back yet is not, I don't believe, indicative of the fact she's not responding. It's the time is not ripe. That case has not ripened to a point where the director is able to provide a response. In a similar fashion, if there are other issues that this body has raised where there's a feeling or a perception that staff has not responded, and I would also base that in the fact that sometimes staff do respond and the body doesn't like the response. That doesn't mean staff hasn't responded. It means the body doesn't like what they were told. So that's a different issue. But I'm happy to work with you, Madam Chair. I would suggest that perhaps members could identify and email you and we can compile a list and see what that list is that is alleged to have been non-responsive from staff. That would be one issue that we could then track and try and create a list to cross items off. Secondly, I am happy to help you in crafting a communication to the mayor and council, asking for clarification on the role of this body as it exists within the ordinance that created not just the PCOC, but the review panels. Other cities, of course, have mixed those two functions into one body. Minneapolis separated those. So I do think that it's important to get clarification from the body that created you on what their intent was in that creation act. And I can certainly help you in crafting that response or that inquiry letter to the mayor and council. And then I think the third point, and if I'm missing it, someone please correct me, but there's this thought process of a future ongoing. How do we get the right people at the table? And I don't mean to tip my hand in any way, Madam Chair. You and I have been talking about this, and I was hopeful that you and I would be able to make the announcement. But you and I have been talking not only about case summary process improvements, but also along this lines of the body's discussion of how do we get the right representation at the table. Certainly you have multiple members from PCOC, you have represented the city attorney's office, provide legal counsel, the clerk's office is here to provide administrative support. The mayor's public safety policy liaison, Mr. Jared Jeffries, attends these meetings. So you have awareness and input and insight from, I think, lots of the top offices of the city. The one that's obviously missing is the police department itself. And it has been our effort to try and secure a designation from Chief Arredondo, a member of his management team who could be a liaison to this group and attend its meetings. And if not able to answer in real time to this body, then certainly, just like with Mr. Jeffries, I think with the mayor and through the mayor to the chief, be another channel of communication to keep those lines open, as many members here tonight have indicated, build those and sustain those solid relationships. And so we are continuing again, and I'm sorry to bring that forward without it being ripe for discussion, but that's something that the chair and I have been working on, is getting a liaison who could then attend these meetings and be more directly responsive and be a conduit into the MPD. So I think there are lots of efforts happening. I think Mr. Hawkins identified this online form. No one at the city will be more pleased to get rid of online meetings than me. And that's all I do all day long is sit on Teams. I will be excited to be back in person. I do think that the online format lends some challenges to our ability to interact in very humane and understanding, graceful ways. It's tried our patience over the last 16 to 17 months. So hopefully within the next month, right, in September, we're hoping to come back in person. I think that changes the tenor and dynamics a bit. I think having the liaison from MPD, having Mr. Jeffries at the table with us, having clarity from mayor and council on the purpose of this group, all of those things can only help this body continue to refine and improve its performance. I think it was Commissioner McGuire who said we want to understand what our role is so that our successors, right, don't have to reinvent the wheel as we have. So I think all of those comments, and now I'm going to try and wrap it up gracefully, are heard by staff, are appreciated and shared by the staff who are with you right now in this space, from OPCR, from the city attorney, from the clerk, from the mayor's office. I know Commissioner Pino has graciously said many times, we all are on the same side, and it's good for us to remember we're all on the same side. So if that's any kind of concluding comment, I'll say we've been in here for 2 hours. I'm sure all of you have personal lives you want to get to and families and things to do. But Madam Chair, I'm happy to connect with you maybe in the next few days to follow up. We can create a list, invite members to send that information to us. We can begin generating some, tracking on those types of outstanding issues. We can draft the letter to mayor and council for clarity. And I think that addresses the major points I heard. Again, if I've missed anything, someone can chime in quickly.
Anybody? Thank you, Casey. Yes.
Happy to help.
Any parting remarks? No. Okay. Well, then, seeing no further business to come before us, and without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much. It was a great meeting. Have a good evening.